Hello and welcome to Dad and Swebb Talk Sports. I'm Swebb.
And I'm Dad.
And we are the dad and daughter duo talking about all of our favorite sports moments from the week. Dad, what's going on?
Not much. Not much, Swebb. How's everything going with you?
I'm feeling good. I just got back from Mexico, which is why I look a little crispier than usual, or than I did
toasty.
2 weeks ago.
You look pretty toasty.
I'm definitely toasty. I'm noticing that my nose is very toasty, but it was a great trip with friends. Got the chance to brush off my Duolingo. Had some great food. Probably won't have Mexican food for a few months because it was just so good over there, and it's not as good here. And had a few frozen beverages overlooking the ocean.
You say the food isn't as good. You mean the Mexican food?
The Mexican food is not as good in the United States, specifically in New York, as it is in Mexico.
What, you have a problem with Taco Bell?
Yes, I do have a problem with Taco Bell. Loved it when I was in high school and I only had $1 or $2 to spend on lunch. Now, I eat the things that I enjoy eating, and Taco Bell's not it.
Taco Bell's pretty good, Swebb.
Taco Bell had its time and place in my life, and it's no longer relevant to me. But the ingredients are fresh over there, so I had tons of guacamole. And typically, when you have guacamole here, if it sits on the table too long, it starts to turn brown. Not in
really?
Mexico. I didn't see a brown avocado the whole entire time I was there. We had a dinner one night at the place that we were staying where we had a chef come in and cook, and he just a cheese quesadilla tastes better than it does over here. Like, everything was fantastic. I ate a lot, which meant that I had to go for a run this morning. I also did run while I was there, but yeah, I am tapped out on tacos and quesadillas and rice bowls and chicken bowls and all that kind of stuff and margaritas, but it was fun. It was fun while it lasted, and it's good to be back.
Would I have liked this type of food?
Yeah, because it was plentiful, and I've seen you dabble in a few chips before. You don't seem to shy away from anything that's put in front of you. There were some steak options, some steak tacos. One of the nights we did go to a restaurant that didn't just serve Mexican food. So I think you would have enjoyed yourself. The hardest part for you would probably be the fact that Cabo, where I was staying, is pretty much on the side of a mountain, and there is some walking required to get to the pool or to get to the ocean. And it does require every once in a while a few extra steps than you might be accustomed to.
Could you get ESPN, MSG, and the Yes Network over there?
You can't get all of those. I'm sure you could get the ESPN and the national networks in the U.S., but we tried to use the TV and it wasn't working the day that we tried to use it, and it didn't really matter because most of the time we were sitting by the pool or we were out of the place. So I actually didn't watch many games this week, so you're going to have to drive this car, my friend.
Doesn't sound like a place I'd want to go, Swebb.
Well,
no TV. You tried to get the TV working one day?
We did.
That's usually the first thing I do when I walk into a hotel room.
Well, you could link your streaming services, but I didn't feel like going through all the trouble. Like, some of my streaming services are the passwords I can't even remember because they're just already logged in. So it was one of those things where I wasn't that precious about it. It's also on Pacific Standard Time, so by the time we actually were in the room and finished dinner and everything, most games were over.
I got the picture.
It was amazing, though. I recommend it.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Or you can stay in Long Island. It's up to you. I hear the beaches there are lovely.
I'm not a beach person, Swebb. Okay,
I
let's
hear
get
the
down to
non-existent
business.
pool that you have is lovely.
Okay. Let's get down to business, Swebb.
Let's get down to business. You're going to have to fill me in on what's been going on for the past week. But before we start, how about we go with back in the day? This is where we each share a memory of something that happened in the sports world, whether it's personally in our lives or something that we watched. You go first, Dad.
Well, you didn't see the Knicks games. I think you saw the Thursday night game.
I saw Game 6 on Thursday. It was actually a 9 p.m. start on the East Coast is too late for a playoff game. But I did watch it on the plane and was able to watch it at home. And hey, because I was on Pacific time for the whole week, I was actually wide awake and caught the whole thing.
Well, the Knicks played a gutty series. This was one of the best playoff series I've seen in a long, long time. And it reminds me of some of the playoff series the Knicks played back in the 70s and the 80s and the 90s with the championship teams in the 70s and the Patrick Ewing's teams that got close. It was tremendous. It was a tremendous series. I remember back, can't remember the year now. It was probably in the 70s. It was early 70s. Knicks playing Boston in a playoff series, and they wrapped up the final game up in Boston at Boston Garden, which was like back in those days, it was almost impossible to win in those places. And what the Knicks did in this series this week was winning 2 games on the road, which was incredible. They blew a game at home, but they stole 2 games on the road. And everybody I talked to that's been talking about this series and what the Knicks did this past 2 weeks, people that have been around for a while, say, wow, this is like the old days. This is like those championship teams. More than one person is saying it. A lot of people are saying that. And for the younger people that never weren't around in those championship days, this is what it takes to grind it out defense that will do whatever it takes to win. And that's this brings back some very good memories, this team.
You're right. This team brings back a lot of good memories. I think this team is very reminiscent of my childhood team in the late 90s growing up. John Starks, Larry Johnson, Charles Oakley, you name it, guys like that. I remember when I was growing up, I think it was probably early middle school days, or maybe even, no, this was pre-middle school. This was elementary school days of all my friends walking around doing the LJ for Larry Johnson after his 4-point play. So this team reminds me of that. Guys, you have your gritty hustle. They've been out rebounding everyone, right? This whole season, they've struggled with injuries and they've been winning every hustle play. And so this team reminds me of that. I am going back to 2012, 2013. This was the last time prior to last season that the Yankees were in the second round of the playoffs facing Indiana. And so I remember that season. This was around the time that LeBron was with the Heat, and they were pretty much the guaranteed Eastern Conference champions just about every year while LeBron was in Miami. And I remember being so excited that the Knicks got through the first round and they played in that second round, and we're thinking, oh, we're definitely going to the Eastern Conference. They're only playing Indiana. Ultimately, they end up losing that series. Guys like Roy Hibbert, I believe, and they had one other big man. They had 2 big centers.
He destroyed them in that series.
Yeah. And I think everyone was shocked because we had almost written our ticket to the Eastern Conference Finals and we had completely overlooked Indiana, and they were just the better team. Like, it wasn't even a good series to watch. Like, this series against Philadelphia was entertaining. and the games came down to the wire in a lot of instances. But this series against the Indiana Pacers in 2013 just shocked everyone. And of course, they end up going on to play the Heat in the Eastern Conference Finals, and the Knicks go home. So it's not a good memory, but it's one that I bring up because now that the Knicks have beaten the Philadelphia 76ers in 6 games, and they're playing in this next round, they're playing the Indiana Pacers. Just a reminder, not that any of them are listening to this podcast or watching this podcast, but as fans, let's not get ahead of ourselves, because I think Indiana has proven that they are a very good team. Now, if for those who have been locked into the Knicks, particularly these last couple of weeks of the regular season, a lot of teams in the NBA in the Eastern Conference were trying to intentionally not get the second seed that the Knicks ended up getting because they didn't want to face the Sixers. And so the Cavs, sat guys. The Bucks also sat guys, and guess what? The Bucks are now at home because everyone wanted to face the Pacers, and now the Bucks are at home because Indiana has put them there, and now the Knicks face the Pacers. This is who we wanted in the first round. We get them in the second round, but let's not get ahead of ourselves because they're a very good team. Over the course of the regular season, the Knicks ended up going 1-2 against Indiana. So this is a big series. Before we jump into the play against Indiana, do you want to highlight anything from this first round against the 76ers?
Yeah, listen. As everybody has seen by now, if they didn't realize it before, the regular season in the NBA is totally different than the playoffs. The intensity picks up, the defense picks up, and in order to win these games, it's not easy to win these playoff games, whether you're you're at home or on the road. And even if you're at home, as Nick saw in game 5 when they lost, it's not easy to win these games, okay? And you have to put in a lot of effort, and it's whoever wants it more. I'll tell you a quick story. Your brother, 8th grade CYO team. I'm coaching the team. We had a great team that year. We made it all the way to the Long Island Championship game and lost in the Long Island Championship. So in the middle of the season, we're undefeated, and we're playing a team that we're way better than. And look up in the third quarter of the game, we're down by about 10 points. I call a timeout, call the team over. Your brother was the point guard on that team, and he was probably the best player in the whole gym. And I said, "What are you doing?" He said, "What do you mean?" I said, "You're Cadillacing around." "What do you mean by that?" I said, "You're not playing hard. You're not playing hard enough." "Well, what about these guys? What are you blaming me for?" "I'm not talking about these guys. I'm talking about you, pal. You're supposed to be the best guy here. You've got to pick up the intensity." "Well, what do you want me to do?" I says, "You got to put your stamp on the game. You have to put your stamp on the game." That doesn't mean take every shot. That means grab every rebound, play tenacious defense, pass, kick out to an open shooter, because we had some good shooters on that team. If you're open, you shoot. If not, kick it out to somebody that's open that can shoot. A few minutes later, we're up by 10. The intensity level has to be intense. In game 6 of that Knicks series, the Knicks came out and they were up by 20 in the first quarter. Now, they lost that lead, but they put their stamp on the game early. That's what you have to do. And as long as you can maintain that throughout the game, fine. You can't sit back and take punches from other teams, because if you do, you're going to lose. And this Indiana team that they're going to be playing now, they're good. And the Knicks don't really match up well with them, and Knicks have had a hard time with them. They have a lot of guys that can score. They don't play good defense, though. Okay? And Milwaukee shouldn't have been wanting to play for.
Let's go over some numbers from the 76ers.
Okay, hold on a second.
The series against the 76ers. Before we get to Indiana. Okay, let's go over some because we're going to talk about them. Obviously, we're going to be playing against Indiana. We'll have a ton of time to talk about them. So, some incredible things happened this series. One, we said Philadelphia is a very tough team. They were one of the top teams in the league until Joel Embiid got hurt. So, the Knicks end up beating the 76ers 4-2. And advanced to play the Indiana Pacers. From a stats perspective, Jalen Brunson averages 35.5 points per game, 9 assists and 4.5 rebounds. You also had guys like Josh Hart, 16.8 points per game, 12.3 rebounds, and average 43% from the 3-point line. Dante DiVincenzo averaged 12 points during those 6 games. Who else do we have? OG Anunoby, 15 points during those games. The Knicks as a team averaged 45.5 rebounds per game over the course of those 6 games. So Jalen Brunson definitely took over. He didn't start the series as hot as we would have hoped that he would. But he definitely took over as the series went on, particularly in games 4, 5, and 6. But this was a huge team win throughout the series. So when Jalen Brunson wasn't having his best games in games 1 and 2, you had guys like Josh Hart stepping up and hitting those shots, going 43% from the 3-point line, right? So Dante DiVincenzo, the Knicks kind of went as he went. When he was hitting shots, the Knicks were winning. When he wasn't hitting shots and he was sitting on the bench, they were struggling a little bit. You had guys like Miles McBride averaging 11.3 points off the bench and also hitting some big-time shots, averaging 43% from the 3-point line. Now, the Knicks have some issues moving into this next series. Bojan Bogdanovic is out for the season. He had played some quality minutes for them and hit some shots and also changed up the way the offense worked when he was on the floor with the reserves. If you recall, I think it was games 1 or 2, or I think both, where the bench guys actually played better than the starters. And that's where the Knicks were able to put some distance between themselves and the 76ers when Bogdanovic, Mitchell Robinson, and Miles McBride were on the floor. So not having him, that really stretched the team out in game 6, right? I think Tibbs went with 7 guys, a 7-man rotation, which is there's a lot of minutes against a tough team, a dirty team, guys getting fouled, guys not at 100% health, which is bound to happen to just about every team at this point in the season that's still in it. But a 7-man rotation is going to be challenging. So there are a lot of successes, a lot of things that make me excited for this upcoming series. The play of Josh Hart, the play of Jalen Brunson, obviously, which is we've been saying all season, the play of Dante DiVincenzo in Game 6, and then you add big-time minutes from Mitchell Robinson, making an impact defensively against Joel Embiid. So there's a lot here that's a success. Now, my concerns going into Indiana is we've only got 7 guys. I think Precious Achiuwa, who only played 2 games in this first series, will play more going into this series with the Pacers. But it's a different style. They play a different style. Go ahead. I cut you off, so give us...
Indiana has a few big men that can shoot well from 3-point range. Okay? That's not Mitchell Robinson's forte, guarding guys out in the perimeter like that. Precious Achiuwa will come in handy. I guarantee you he'll play a lot of minutes. Okay? Indiana has a lot of good shooters, and they have a tremendous point guard. The Knicks are going to have to really play serious basketball. There's no time for any goofing off, slacking off, or just taking things for granted. They have a lot of shooters, and even their backup point guard is very good. McConnell. He went to University of Arizona. He always gives the Knicks a hard time, and he's very experienced. He doesn't turn the ball over. In that last series, in Game 5, the game that the Knicks lost at home, Brunson scoring a lot of points, but He had some crucial turnovers in the last few minutes of the game. And then when it went to overtime, the Knicks took 10 shots in overtime. He took 8 of them. He wasn't passing the ball, okay? Just because somebody says take over, that doesn't mean you take all the shots. That means now in Game 6, I knew between the head coach and his father, who's one of the assistant coaches, they were going to talk to him. And he totally different in Game 6 when they won on the road. He didn't turn the ball over late in the game, and he didn't try to take every shot. You can't just take every shot if you're double teamed and you're triple teamed. And that's the winning shot was when he penetrated and kicked the ball out to Hart. Hart hit a three-pointer. They have other guys that can shoot and score, and he's got to use his team.
Now, one thing about the Knicks and the way that they played against the Pacers this season, OG Anunoby and Mitchell Robinson both have not played in any of those 3 games this season against the Pacers. So we know that the Knicks are a different team when OG is on the floor, right? Like they're 25-4, I think. I've lost track, but they're extremely successful when OG is on the floor. He brings, between him and Mitch, those are 2 top-tier defenders. I know you mentioned Mitch's forte is not to guard a big man that's shooting outside. We've seen that before early in the season against the Celtics. But these guys bring a different level of defense that they didn't have for 3 games. So it's really tough to say how this series is going to go because we haven't played them. We haven't played the Pacers with this team, and they haven't played us. So we don't know what's going to happen here. But all I will say is that it's going to be another gritty series. It's going to be stressful the way the first round was, but this team has what it takes to beat the Pacers. This team has what it takes to beat anyone that's left in the playoffs. So the first game is Monday night. Everyone who watches us and tunes into us will watch this on Monday afternoon, and they will then go and play Indiana on Wednesday at home, Friday and Sunday in Indiana, and then the following week if those games are needed.
Yep, that's how it's going to go. That's how it's going to go. And I just wish Julius Randle was here.
It'd be nice.
He was on the bench He was on the bench the other night after his surgery. He had his surgery like 3 to 4 weeks ago. So now his arm isn't in a sling anymore. Somebody asked me the other day, do you think he could play in this series or the next series? I said no. It's a 6-month rehab. So we'll see him in the fall.
And the way that the Sixers were playing defense,
Ugh.
He probably wouldn't have gotten through this series with both arms. So let's go Knicks. It should be fun. We'll hold our breath along the way. I know the Garden will be jumping, and so far so good. We'll see what happens on Monday night. Now, Sunday night, as we're recording, in a few 30 minutes or so, the Rangers will kick off their second round of the playoffs against Carolina, the Carolina Hurricanes. They'll play Sunday night at home, Tuesday night at home, and then Thursday and Saturday in Raleigh, and the following week if those games are needed. I'll be honest with you, I wasn't getting too much of the NHL games in Mexico either. So all I know is when we recorded last time, they scored a bunch. But they go on to sweep the Capitals in round 1. They looked great, and they definitely outplayed the Capitals. But the Hurricanes are a tough team. They scored 111 points on the season during the regular season. The Rangers scored 114. So Carolina's been a tough team for the last couple of seasons, and they've certainly played the Rangers tough, and we'll see what happens here.
Yeah, the Rangers, they're playing great. Carolina is real good. The Rangers might have a slight advantage on the road games because a lot of New Yorkers have moved down to North Carolina. So like in Philadelphia where the Knicks fans took over the Philadelphia arena, there might be a lot of Ranger fans down in Raleigh, North Carolina at the games.
Let me tell you something, Philadelphia. You've always been known as a huge sports city. I remember when the Eagles won the Super Bowl a few years back. The place was going nuts. People were climbing light poles and all types of stuff. But the fact that the 76ers had to publicly state that they were buying 2,500 seats or 2,000 seats to give to first responders in Philly because they didn't want Knicks fans to buy those tickets. Aren't you embarrassed? Like, this is like you've lost a lot of credibility in 2 short weeks playing against the Knicks, Philly.
Well, before you say that, maybe they're not. Maybe basketball is not their number one team, their number one sport. I know football. That wouldn't happen in a football stadium, and I don't think that would.
When your team is
and
in
that
the
wouldn't
playoffs,
happen.
when your team is in the
That
playoffs,
wouldn't happen in the baseball.
It's time to show up. The fact that I, as a Knicks fan, I love it. It's great. Yeah, fill your arena with Knicks fans. I don't care. Or publicly state that there are so many Knicks fans that we have to buy the tickets ourselves as an organization, which James Dolan would never do. So I'm not going to make excuses for the city of Philadelphia. They really, the city went down a few levels in my book, having not filled their own arena for round one against the Knicks. It's not like they were playing, the Cleveland Cavaliers. Sure, they're a good team, they're exciting, but they're not the Knicks. You can't show up when your team's playing the Knicks in the playoffs. Anyhow, okay, so I haven't watched a lick of baseball this week, so I'm going to turn it over to you. I am wearing this New York Yankees t-shirt that I got in the mail from you, Santa. I feel like I've seen this before. I know it's not a new shirt because the tag is quite weathered. I really like it. There's a lot going on. We've got banners. It's a World Series 1956 t-shirt. We've got some text on the sleeves. There's a lot going on. This is a very busy shirt. Do you want to give anyone the story of this? Because it looks nice on me, and I think I might wear it a few times.
I don't remember how I got it. I was probably given it. Somebody probably got it for me, and I used to wear that. I wore that to a few games like 20 years ago, 25 years ago. You
were skinny back then, huh? Or maybe I've had too many tacos, one or the other, because this fits me. It's a loose fit. I'll take a picture of myself to upload so you can see it with me standing up. It is a loose fit, but you today could not fit into this. So either I've had too many tacos or you were a lot skinnier back then.
It's the tacos, Swebb. It's the tacos.
Yeah, sure. All right. So fill us in about the Yankees and the Mets. Anything that you want to cover from this past 2 weeks, really, of baseball. It's still early in the season.
Well, the Yankees went down to, they started off the week last weekend in Milwaukee, won 2 of 3. Then they went to Baltimore, played 4, lost 3. All the games were tight, but the Yankees didn't hit a lick. The game they did win, they won 2-0. Then they've come home this weekend and playing Detroit. They won the first 2 games and they're tied in the bottom of the 7th, 2-2 in the Sunday game. The Mets had a pretty good week. They're down. They beat the Chicago Cubs a few games at home, and then they went down to Tampa, and they're playing Tampa this weekend. Last I checked, they were losing 4-3. To Tampa.
And the Yankees this week will play the Astros and the Tampa Bay Rays. The Mets will play the St. Louis Cardinals and the Atlanta Braves this week.
That stadium down in Tampa is kind of a wacky stadium. I've gone to about 4 games in that place. But they do have some tremendous entertainment. During the 7-inning stretch, they have a security man that they start playing some music. And then he looks around, and they put him up on the screen, and then he has some of my dance moves, Swebb. Maybe we can incorporate that into the.
You could do it right now for us if you want.
I was down in Florida a few weeks ago. I put in an application for that job.
Okay. I'd love to see you lifting a rake.
Everybody, forget about a rake. I'm talking about the security man that dances.
I thought it was
during the seventh.
I thought he was part of the grounds crew.
No, he acts. He stands there like he's just looking around, and then all of a sudden they put his picture up on the screen, and then they play a little music, and he goes, and then they put his picture back up on the screen, and then all of a sudden he breaks into the kind of dance, only the kind of dance moves that I could do.
Don't believe a word of what he says about his dance moves, folks. Okay, so before we close things out, Dad, anything you're looking forward to this week besides more playoff action for both the Yankees or for both the Rangers and the Knicks?
Well, tonight on the ACC network, I believe at 9:30 or 10 o'clock, is the selection show for men's lacrosse, college men's lacrosse. Duke played a tremendous game. They're in the ACC tournament right now. Duke played a tremendous game against Syracuse on Friday night. Andrew McAdory scored 5 goals, and Brennan O'Neill from Bayshore scored 4 goals, and they moved Andrew McAdory back to attack where he played last year, and he just went off. He dominated the first half of the game. Then they played today at noon against Notre Dame, who's the number 1 team in the country. Duke's the number 2 team in the country, and they got beat up by Notre Dame for the second time this year. Notre Dame's real good. They got a ton of Long Island kids. They're the defending champions. They're real good. Half of their team is from Chaminade High School in Mineola,
Long Island.
Long Island. They're going to be tough to beat. The only team that probably has a realistic chance of beating them is Duke, if they can get themselves together and reorganize themselves. We'll see what happens. But those are definitely the best 2 teams in the country.
Well, good luck to Duke lacrosse. I forgot to ask because it's been so long since we last talked and because I was in Mexico. What do you think of the Jets draft?
The Jets had a good draft. They got an offensive lineman. Leading up to the draft, everybody was saying, the Jets should draft this tight end or this wide receiver. Don't you people ever learn? Your quarterback is running for his life or flat on his back all the time. You're not going to win like that. Your quarterback has to be protected. So they went out in March when free agency, and they signed a few 30-something-year-old offensive linemen that have had a good past. However, they're very injury prone. So the Jets went out and drafted on their first round an offensive lineman from Penn State. Oshu, I can't pronounce his last name. Tremendous offensive lineman. And then they drafted a few running backs because they're kind of giving away what they plan on doing. They're not just going to be throwing the ball over the place, even though Aaron Rodgers is going to be back. They're going to establish a running game. They already had 1 good running back. They just drafted 2 more. And that's how they're going to play. And then rely on their defense. You can go far. That's how Michigan won. They weren't throwing the ball all over the place. They had a real good defense. They had a tremendous running attack. And when they had to pass, they always gave their quarterback time to throw the ball.
All right. So good job by the Jets and their draft. Now, Dad, before we close out, do you want to give us a tip of the week, a dad tip of the week?
Yeah. When you're a kid and your parents do this, do that, do this, do that, and you follow along, everything's good. Your life's good. Things work out well for you. And then sometimes some people, as life goes on, they decide, I'm not going to do what I did with my parents. I'm going to kind of veer away from how I was raised. When you do that, many times it can lead to problems. And I fear that there's a lot of people nowadays, more than ever, that I can remember, and I've been around for a little while. Get off my lawn, Swebb. Start veering away from the things that created success for them and got them to where they are in life. Don't do that. You're just going to create problems for yourself and sometimes for members of your family. Stick to the principles. There's basic success principles that are proven to work. 2 + 2 is 4. There's nothing changing that. That's what it is. You put on your shirt, you put one arm in, you put another arm in. That's how it works. You put on a pair of pants, you put on one leg at a time. If it's a shirt that buttons down the front, it's one arm, one arm. Stick to what has worked. Don't veer away and start doing things that your friends do, or this person, or some acquaintance tells you to do, or somebody tells you to do, or some idiot in the media tells you to do. No, stick to what has worked, that has gotten you to where it is, to where you are in life. That's my tip of the week, Swebb.
All right. Stick to what you know. Stick to what has worked and what has led to success. Go Knicks. Go Rangers. Go Duke Lacrosse. I said it. And make sure to follow us at Dad and Swebb on Instagram and X and YouTube and Rumble. Subscribe to our videos. And we'll see you next week.
So long.
Thank you for tuning in to Dad and Swebb Talk Sports, the show where we cover all of our favorite sports moments from the past week. Don't forget to subscribe on YouTube and Rumble and follow us at Dad and Swebb on Instagram and X. See you next week.